point out. But the U.S. is still considering bombing the billions of military equipment that you paid for out of your tax dollars and American lives and Afghan lives. Right. And they're like, maybe we'll just bomb it, just explode it, just in case. I highly doubt that's going to happen, even if they say it's what happened, because my point is this is all going to go to the Taliban. I think that was what was likely, at least after all of this, the plan. But we maybe just bomb it. Right. So how do you feel about that, Americans who've been spending lots and lots of money, trillions of dollars for 20 years? Americans have been killed. Afghans have been killed. And we'll just bomb everything and let the Taliban take over. So what was the benefit there? Literally nothing except the agenda of the U.S. government. Oh, and don't forget this. This is a horrific reality. A shot from a Fox News discussion. U.S. weapons seized by the Taliban. Now, were they seized? Were they seized if it was just picked up on the ground? If the U.S. government just left, which is what happened, and they just walked over and took them, is it seized? Interesting. But $85 billion of U.S. funding to the Afghan army. And in moments, they were ran over because it was a puppet show. It was not really what you thought it was. My guess is that money went right into the hands of whoever the government wanted it to, and none of it really happened the way we thought it did. 600,000 weapons, 75,000 vehicles, 200 aircraft. Biden to consider using U.S. troops to help evacuate Kabul airport. That's fantastic. So what's that? 3,000 that went up to 5,000. Then we added 1,000 to help the evacuation and 1,000 to stop the Taliban, even though we were still kind of pretending that was an evacuation part. Now we're considering more troops to help evacuation. Okay, wait a minute. So what were the first 3,000? And then the next 2,000? And then the next 1,000, the 1,000 after that? Was that all for evacuation? So what's the point of more troops for evacuation, guys? Are we still pretending like this is about evacuation? I can promise you, mark my words, let's put it this way. My opinion is that this is going to end up where they somehow decide to let the Taliban continue to rule. And guess what? They're going to have all these things that they continue to use. They're going to send more troops in, and they're going to continue to stay there to help the Taliban continue to settle the situation, which ends up being forever. Mark my words. I'm not saying I know that for any specific reason, but if you're a student about how these things go, if you watch the way that if you pay attention, just the smallest amount, guys, you can see how these things continue to go. Last point on the Taliban, as Sarah Abdallah points out, or on Afghanistan, 4 decades of U.S.-led war against Afghanistan. Jimmy Carter, all the way back to 1979, launches Operation Cyclone against Afghanistan left-wing government. Now, what's interesting about this is you can go all the way back to the 80s and look at Zbigniew Brzezinski openly talking about how Afghanistan was the starting point, that was the starting point of where this was all going to begin. And guess what? It turned out to be the starting point. And then we talk about the 7 countries in 5 years and the whole discussion, guys, whether that ended up happening. This was a plan. They knew they wanted to go there. And so are we going to pretend like it just happened to work out where Afghanistan was the place that which ended up not actually being tied in regard to, I was thinking of Iraq, but Afghanistan being the point where we're talking about 9/11, we all tie it back. And it turns out that there's a lot more going on in that story, despite the fact that they already pointed that out as the starting point, which then led to Iraq and then led to, we can see how they've been stepping stoned to where they're going now and looking at Iran next. This has been going on for a long time. Ronald Reagan meets with the Mujahideen, calling them freedom fighters. Remember the Mujahideen, who they used to throw against the Soviets, who later became Al-Qaeda, who later became ISIS, right? Your government is, it doesn't matter. All the narrative, your government created this problem. And it's still there today. And now they're using that problem to justify more things. And they're continuing to create more problems and then pointing those problems to justify more things, on and on and on. George Bush affirmed support for the rebels. Sound familiar to Syria? But advised them to act with restraint in order to maintain control of the capital of Kabul. Interesting. Clinton bombs Afghanistan and Sudan, this is 1998, as an act of self-defense. Funny how these things just keep swinging around, and that wasn't self-defense then. How are you going to pretend it's self-defense from that far away against imminent terrorism and retribution for bombings in U.S. embassies? Okay, so the hypothetical, this is the Bethlehem Doctrine. This is that we have credible evidence that they probably are going to retaliate somewhere at some time, so we can kill them and pretend that was self-defense. That's Israel and the United States. They're the only ones, I think the UK as well, that adopted this ridiculous mindset, and they claim that's self-defense. 2001. Bush initiates the so-called war on terror and invades Afghanistan. This has all been building toward this the whole time. And this was all based off 9/11, which was the point that they justified everything they've been trying to do. Obama drops 1,337 bombs on Afghanistan and maintains presence throughout the entire of the presidency. Trump drops the mother of all bombs, killing dozens of Afghans, civilians, bombs Afghanistan and withdraws troops. Biden leaving Afghanistan worse than ever. But that's not really what's happening, by the way. This is just a graphic from, of course, not a surprise for me. The soapbox says that. That's wrong. Didn't withdraw troops. I mean, that's not what's happening, guys. Did he withdraw troops? Clearly not. There's been like 5,000 more troops added, guys. Let's not just repeat what they say. Huh?